Hello guys, good morning. So, can you hear me? Okay, okay. Yesterday we have seen table delete actions, and also we had a brief introduction about object-oriented programming in D365. Okay. So the language we use in Dynamics 365 is X++. Okay. So the X++ is an object-oriented programming language, which is specifically designed for D365. So it follows all the object-oriented programming standards. Okay, like it supports classes and objects and all the object-oriented programming concepts. Like inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation, etc. Let's see. Let's dive into the project and see. So as I mentioned yesterday, everything you see, every object, every component you see in Dynamics 365 is more or less a class. And uh, I've shown you the table, engine customer table. If you right click on view code, you see you come here. This is a class. And enum is another data type which is more or less a class. This is a struct basically, but this is also a kind of class. Okay. So let's create a class in Dynamics 365. It's a runnable class. Runnable class. Excuse me. I just created a class, internal final class. So internal final is are the keywords which are also related to OOPS concepts. And a class example is a class name. We have a method inside this class which is main. Okay. So we can run this class. How to run this class? Right click on the class, set as startup object, set as startup object, and if you run this, let me run it. Running ANG class example. ANG class example. It is running this. We don't have anything. As soon as you hit the as soon as you hit the run button, it invokes this class and starts executing it. This method is executing, is getting executed. Let me write a small message here for hello world. Okay, hello world I wrote. Here you can see also this comment added by Microsoft. The system will call this method when a designated menu is selected or when execution starts and calls and this class is set as startup object. So we said this can be invoked in two ways. One is when this class is attached to a menu, or set this class as startup object and then start. Those are the two ways. We did the second way, like that is we set this class as startup object and then run the application. Still running. Hello world. Now the execution is completed. Inside this method, excuse me. Inside this method, we have this info message. Info message is nothing but info will display whatever we give inside, that is displayed here as a info message in the front end. Okay, this is a class. This is class is also a template. This is a special type of class where we have an entry point. There are normal classes where we don't have a special entry method. We use them in the different scenarios. But if you want to run some code for testing, or you want to specify a basic operation or a specific operation, you write the code inside this main method and then run this class. Okay, either by adding it to menu item or by setting this as a startup object. As I mentioned yesterday, class is it's a template. You can create object of that class, which is an instance of a class. Let's see another example. What that is? How oops are in play here. Let me create a normal class. Not a runnable class. This runnable class is a special class which we use for testing or doing a specific activity. Let's create ng person class. So as soon as you create a class, it created a file. Which is ng person class.xpp and showed it and opened it for us. Let's forget these. Instead I'll use stop it. Let's change it to public. Okay, I'll explain what that is. Access specifiers. This public or whatever you see in the earlier internal final, right? Internal final, internal or public. I changed it to public. The removed final. Delete. This is called access specifier. We have these two, right? Also, there are other things: private, internal, private, etc., etc. So, as I mentioned, class is a template. Here we have seen class person. We do the same. What are the properties or attributes in general sense. What are the attributes of a person? A person, a person may contain a name, which is his name. Then ID. ID means it can be Aadhaar card, PAN card, something you'll be having. In this case, let's say a bank. A bank uses this person class, or else what we can say. Okay, we can say, don't take the bank example. I think we'll go with the standalone example as well. String, string, name, string, address, string, string, age, string, gender. Whether he is a male or female. Not string here. It will take it as integer. Okay. These are some of the attributes or properties of a class. Okay, in real world. But in object world, in the object oriented programming world, this template is called class with the name person class, and all these are called its members, right? Its members. There are also methods. What are methods? Let's say instead of having age here, we have a date date of birth. Class that not only contains members but also methods. What is a method? It executes a piece of code and returns something out of after executing that. Public integer age. And this age cal gives excuse me, yes. This age calculates this person's age based on the date of birth. Because this because date of birth is already present within this class. So what does this do? This calculates the logic like current year minus date of birth year, which gives the age. Understand? This method specifies a piece of code which contains a piece of a block of code and executes it and return some value. It can either return something or it may not return something. If it returns something, we mention it here as the return type here, what it returns. If it does not return anything, we just simply say void. Understand? This is a class. Like this, we have member variables and member methods, and there are other things. Okay, you understand what a class is. For now, for the sake of understanding, I don't use this method. I want to make it instead of date of birth, I'll take integer real. Sorry, integer age. So we test this person class inside this. As I mentioned in the earlier example, in the table we see person. Yeah, not view code. Open table browser. Here we also have ID other, right? Other ID. Let's take the same example. Address. Other int ID. These are additional fields. Okay. Here we have Virat, Vijay, Suresh, Rohit. Let's try to create an instance for this template. As I said, let's create an instance for Vijay. How do we do that? Just go to the Runnable class. Keep it as it is. Anj person class, and then variable for that object Vijay equal to new Anj person class. This is syntax for creating an object, or syntax for the class. So and after creating this, we can access Vijay dot. You don't see anything here because in the person class you have to declare these as public variables. So as we came here, let me explain what access specifiers are. You see here, public, internal, private, right? So typically the member variables will have either public or private. What does that mean? What does that mean? So this class, this name, if it is made public, this is exposed to the outer world. I just made only name as public. That's why it is accessible here. I'll set the name as Vijay. I can do this because I set the variable as public. The rest all are private by default. If you don't mention anything, that becomes private and it is inaccessible to the external world. because that is not exposed to the external world. Those are access specifiers. Understand? Those are basically access specifiers. So if you want to, the same way, if it is by default, the classes are public because they are accessible outside. If it is not public, nobody can access it. Right. There are cases where you have a private class. Those are very, very special classes, instances. Like like a class within a class, you can have that. Private class, internal class. In such cases, you can have private classes. Otherwise, mostly you won't even say I don't. I think I doubt that in your entire life in X++ career, you won't see a private class. I highly doubt that. But mostly the classes are public or internal. That's it. Here the default is public. So so you need to have an access specifier. I want to have all these accessible in the outside, so I will make them all public. Like public, public, public. So you can access all of them here. Now, as soon as I change them to public, all of the methods are accessible here. So what is this dot? This thing. This is called IntelliSense. As soon as you do something and write something, it gives the suggestions. Visual Studio will give suggestions. This is called IntelliSense. IntelliSense means it suggests you based on its inherent intelligence. Okay, this is IntelliSense, and I'll set the properties. Let Aadhaar equal to some xxxx. This masking dot age equal to something, some 35. J dot address Hyderabad, and so on and so forth. So I created an object for this class. Which class? Person class. How do I do that? This is just a declaration. This is nothing but I'm doing nothing and just splitting those two. Just splitting those two. I just declared a class variable that Vijay is of type a class, and then assigning this Vijay a new object. New object. This new object, new ANJ person class, will create that object and assigns that to Vijay. Until and unless you create a new object, you cannot use this variable. Just remember, guys, you can only use this Vijay variable if and only after creating an object for